Good afternoon. Welcome to my channel, Watercolor Painting in the Afternoon. Today I'm painting this cylinder that I got a glass bottle in the mail. I got the cylinder itself. I got the glass bottle in the cylinder. And I decided to paint these flowers on it all over, I guess they're poppies. I think I'm going to say they're poppies. And today I'm going to paint this area right here. I didn't want to paint the entire thing for you because it really took a long time. So today what I'm doing is starting out with some alizarin crimson and some rose color, and I'm going to paint it somewhere around here. Switching brushes now. I covered this in gesso, which is this acrylic medium that you can put on most surfaces to make it paintable. Now I'll admit that with gesso, the watercolor kind of sits on top of the surface, and you don't always get the same kind of effect you would on watercolor paper. But if you're patient with it, you can get a really nice effect. And here I'm just kind of trying to move the paint around so that it will not all pool in one place. Like I said, gesso is not watercolor, doesn't make the surface absorb watercolor, but it does make it take watercolor. And once the watercolor has dried, you have to be a little bit careful because it can come off if you get the surface wet. So you have to be a little bit careful with it and not get the surface wet, or, as I'm going to do, put something over it. So some kind of coating, that's waterproof. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I plan to do. So at this point, I'm just going to continue to try to get a nice color on this flower. And I also wanted to paint these little flowers around it. They're more in a pinkish coral, and they're just little filler flowers. So I'll be quiet for a minute and we'll just paint. I also wanted to include something that looks a lot like eucalyptus leaves to me, and this very faint mint green. And I thought it was really pretty with the pink. And you can see above the eucalyptus leaves that I'm painting here, I already painted a mint green flower. I have no idea what flower that is. It's just a 5-petal flower. But I just thought that the colors really went beautifully together. And so I filled in some of the spaces with what can be described as a eucalyptus leaf. It's just a circle painted in a pale green, and then connected with a stem later. Sorry, I got interrupted by my telephone. I don't know about you, but I get about 10 of those calls a day where I don't know the person. They're wanting me to buy car insurance or something. I don't know. So green leaves next around the pink flower. Scooby-Doo, by the way, is my that's the sound that my phone makes when I get a call, and especially if it's from work or something like that. My kids, I chose the ringtone, Mom, Ma, Mommy, Mama. I love it. It's hilarious. I always know when my kids are calling. My husband's ringtone is Looney Tunes. It's very appropriate. So another little eucalyptus leaf down here. Trying to add in some white gouache so it'll be a little more opaque. It's really hard to see that green. It just needs to be a little bit more opaque. Now here I'm doing the actual green flower. Well, it's not so much green as it is turquoise, but it's pretty. It's a pretty color. And I just put a few of those scattered around on the cylinder. And I wanted them to be a little more, as I said, opaque. So I added some white gouache. It's a little bit hard to see, isn't it? It's better when it dries, actually. It's easier to see when it dries. And here are some more of those little filler flowers. I had a little too much paint, watery paint on my brush, so I had to tap that off a little bit. It really does sit right on the surface, so it's not absorbing like it would on a piece of 100% cotton paper, and you can get paint puddles. So you do have to really control the amount of water that you use in the paint. And it works, but you just have to kind of get used to doing it. And it'll look just fine when it dries, but you have to try not to puddle the paint, because then you'll get these little dark spots, and they're kind of hard to get rid of. So we're letting that dry, and now that it's dry, we can go back and we can fill in some of the detail. I have a teeny weeny little brush that I use for these details. It's kind of like a rigger. It's just kind of like a few little hairs in that brush, just a few, and really paints some very fine details. Here we go with the green, and I'm just pulling these strokes down across the petal being sure that I go with the shape of the petal and the direction of the petal so that it doesn't look like I've just stuck some lines on there. It really does help to make the flower come to life. Here I'm just filling in a little bit where there was a spot that one of those eucalyptus leaves wasn't quite dark enough for me. Now I go into the center of the green flower with a little ultramarine blue. It's a pretty color combination. And here again with the lines that sort of define those petals and help your eye believe that there's movement, that the petals are curved and curled a little bit. And here I'm going to put some black in the center of the pink flower. I also think that's a nice color combination. Actually, I think that might be Payne's Gray, but I believe I switched over at some point to Ivory Black because the Payne's Gray sort of sat on top of the gesso too much. Yeah, there I go. I'm putting the Ivory Black in because I needed it to be a richer black. You can see how, well, no, I didn't do that either, did I? That was the stem for that flower. But I think I do go back and put Ivory Black in the center of that pink flower because I just wanted it to have a little depth of color. Another great medium you could use on something like this would be you could either use acrylic or you could, oh yes, and you do need to let it dry. You can use all kinds of different things. You could probably even use an oil on it. I've not used oil in years and years. A little bit of gold in the center of the flowers just gives it some shimmer and shine. Another great medium you can use with gesso would be gouache. That would really work well. And that's it. I think that's pretty much the cylinder finished. I'm showing you all the way around it. I think it turned out pretty nicely. And now I'm going to show you how I applied the gesso. Here I couldn't resist showing you the cylinder again. I just think it turned out really nice. I'm going to show you how I applied the gesso on the lid, and just very briefly. This little lid, there's the gesso. Daler Rowney, I think, is the brand. And I just put a little bit on my glass cutting board there, and I'm going to use a nice sized brush and just apply it to the lid. You can make it as smooth or as rough as you want. It works just fine either way. A lot of people like to texture the gesso, which is a fine thing to do. It's perfectly fine. And now I have already painted the lid, and I'm just going back with the gold to embellish it. I really hope you've enjoyed this today. I certainly enjoyed this project. It took me a while, and that's why I kind of showed it to you in bits and pieces. But my husband puts coins in it, and now it doesn't look like just a brown cylinder sitting on the table. It looks pretty nice. I think I have a picture of what it looks like sitting on the table, and I'll show that to you at the very end. If you've enjoyed today's video, I hope you will click that like button and subscribe. It really helps me out. There it is on the table. Thanks for watching, and have a great day. Happy painting!